in Matthew chapter 12, you'll find Jesus undergoing a slightly different kind of test. There is a question that comes from the Pharisees, but it's not deliberately set out to test Jesus. It's more a criticism of what he and his disciples are doing, and Jesus has to stick to being Lord of the Sabbath, his understanding of the law being greater than theirs, and to go back to what the difference is between the letter of the law and the spirit with which it was given. So the story is really simple, that on the Sabbath, he and his disciples are walking through a cornfield, and it says his disciples were hungry and began to pick and eat some corns and eat them. Now, I misunderstood this passage when I first read it because I didn't understand what the problem was. I thought the problem was that they were stealing the corn. That's not the case at all. There is a really beautiful part of the law in Leviticus which tells a farmer that when he gets his food from the fields, when he harvests it, he should leave a strip of crop around the edge of the field so that anybody can come and pick it. And the people who should come and pick it are those that are poor or widows or orphans, or especially those who are strangers in the land because they were not able to own land in Israel and farm it themselves, to make sure that everybody had, in their moment of hunger, a way of eating. So it tells us something interesting about Jesus and his disciples at this point in the story, in that they have become homeless wanderers, or at best sofa surfers, and they are poor, and they're recognised as that. So there's nothing at all wrong with them picking the corn. What's brilliant is that this farmer is still sticking to that law from Leviticus and understanding how brilliant and important it is. This is the problem that the Pharisees have, that they're doing it on the Sabbath. And so they take Jesus apart, and they say, when the Pharisees saw this, they said, look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath. Their criticism of Jesus is that he is allowing those that he is mentoring and showing how to live to break a really simple and fundamental law as far as they're concerned. They're working on the Sabbath. It mustn't be done. It's not allowed, however hungry you are. Jesus' answer is a bit more long-winded than the other tests that we've seen him undergo. Because what he does is he points to the Old Testament and starts to say, here are examples of where what you would say is fixed law was broken because of the circumstances and understanding the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law. He said, haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, only for the priests. Because Jesus knows that they know the story really well. They teach this story at the synagogue and try to make people understand what it is to follow this rule. The situation was that David and his companions were on the run from evil King Saul, who was trying to kill them. They were really hungry. They went into the temple, and the bread that was consecrated just for the priests to eat, that they ate it. More than that, they were encouraged to do so by the priests, who saw that they needed the food in this particular situation. And so all other laws went aside because they were in need. Jesus continues, or haven't you read in the law that the priests on Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what the words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. In saying that last sentence, he is resisting the temptation to not be who he is. Jesus understands and helped write all the laws that God gave his people. He understands the origin of them, he understands the letter of them, and he understands the spirit of it. In this circumstance, picking corn on the Sabbath is fine, because the Sabbath was made to bless people. It wasn't meant to give them a straitjacket from which they could not escape. On other occasions, Jesus has similar arguments with the Pharisees about what they are willing to do on Sabbath for their animals, and said surely the same would apply to people. So he goes to the Old Testament and says there are moments where people just go back to understanding what was intended by this law. So what's very important in this story to understand is that the Sabbath is really, really important to God. It's there in the Ten Commandments that you should keep the Sabbath. It's something that is there from the very beginning. The origins of Sabbath was that when God created the heavens and the earth, remember Jesus was part of that design and creation. For 6 days he spoke into being many parts of creation. The last thing that he spoke into being was human beings made in his image. And he looked and he saw that it was all good because it was his beautiful creation. And then for a day he rested. And human beings' first experience of God was seeing God rest. It's like it's weaved into the fabric of who God is and what he wants for everybody. There are many points in the Old Testament where the Sabbath is emphasized in a way that maybe in our modern world we don't take so seriously. When you get to the story of the building of the tabernacle, one of those moments where the people of Israel listened to God and did exactly what he asked, and the Spirit came down on creative people to make this beautiful thing, there was one law that was emphasized in the way that they were going to go about building this tabernacle as a place for God to dwell with them as they travelled through the wilderness, travelled through the desert. And that law that was highlighted was nothing to do with building or listening to God properly or anything like that. It was that they must keep the Sabbath. It said, you will build this tabernacle and you will once a week rest completely from what you're doing. When God provided miraculous food for them in the desert, manna from heaven, he set it up so that the manna went off if you tried to use it for more than one day. It was literally your daily bread. But he created this complicated system of what happened on a Friday, in that you were given 2 days worth of manna on a Friday because none would be provided on the Sabbath day, on the Saturday. So you collected 2 days, and then on the Sabbath day you were able to eat your manna without having worked in any way to pick it or to prepare it, so that they could properly keep the Sabbath. This is how seriously God takes the Sabbath. But it is a gift to us, not a straitjacket to stop people who are genuinely hungry from being able to eat. So it's not just that Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. His test was also to say, you have misunderstood the purpose of the Sabbath. And the idea that Jesus' disciples would go hungry on the Sabbath while they're walking past corn that has been deliberately left there for people like them who are hungry. There is nothing wrong with them picking and eating. And this is one of the moments where Jesus and the Pharisees are going to part company in understanding, because the Pharisees just cannot see how Jesus could break what they think is a fundamental law, no matter what the circumstances are. Let's make sure that we always understand the spirit of the law, what it was originally trying to achieve, as well as the detail. Otherwise, sometimes we can go against Jesus whilst apparently trying to fulfill what God wanted in his laws.